These haunting surveillance images show the final hours of 21-year-old Tove Tunnies before she was bullied and killed by her so-called friends, a brutal act driven by jealousy and betrayal. But taking her life wasn't enough for them. In a shocking attempt to cover up their crime, they set her body on fire. What's even more disturbing, they later told police they did it as a favor, claiming they didn't want her to feel alone. And if that wasn't chilling enough, this wasn't the first time they had tried to end her life. This case is as haunting as it is horrifying, and by the end, you'll be questioning just how much you can really trust the people around you. Let's get into it. It all happened on the night of October 15th, 2022. Tove Tunnies was out at a local bar in Vetlanda, Sweden, having a good time with friends. But she had no idea that this night would take a deadly turn. Surveillance footage from the bar shows her arriving at 12:07 a.m. She and her friends grabbed some drinks and appeared to be enjoying themselves. But just an hour later, as the bar was closing, Tove ran into Joanna Jansson, 20, and Maya Hellman, 18. And what happened next was a chain of events that no one could have predicted. Tove and Joanna weren't just random acquaintances. They had history. Once close friends back in 2020, their relationship had completely fallen apart, leaving behind nothing but bad blood and resentment. And on this night, all that tension came bubbling to the surface. At 1:30 a.m., Tove's boyfriend Albin received a chilling text. "Joanna hit me." Alarm bells went off instantly. He called her, but she played it down, told him she was fine, and promised to explain everything when she got home, but she never would. 18 minutes later, 1:49 a.m., Albin checked in again before heading to bed. This time, Tove admitted she was on her way to Joanna's apartment to settle things once and for all. Albin didn't like this one bit. He could hear Joanna and Maya in the background. Something about it felt off. He warned her to be careful. She didn't listen. Morning came. Tove still wasn't home. At 5:46 a.m., Albin, now wide awake and uneasy, tried calling her via Snapchat. No answer. He called again. Nothing. His gut told him something was wrong. Then he remembered. Joanna's apartment. At 5:53 a.m., he dialed Joanna. No response. But at 6 a.m., she called him back. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She said she had just gotten out of the shower and insisted that Tove left her apartment around 3 a.m. Albin wanted to believe her. Maybe Tove had gone to her dad's place instead, but she hadn't. A few hours later, panic set in. Still no word from Tove. Still no sign of her. At 9:53 a.m., Albin tried Joanna again. Another 5-minute conversation. Another rehearsed version of events. She stuck to her story. Tove left her place hours ago. Meanwhile, Tove's dad, Peter, found her bike, just 100 to 200 meters from Joanna's apartment, unlocked, basket empty. Tove was nowhere to be seen. By 4:19 p.m., after hours of searching with no sign of Tove, her family had no choice. They filed a missing persons report with the police. They described her as 160 centimeters tall, with a normal build, red curly hair, and noted that she had her mobile phone and credit card with her. Tove was well known in Vetlanda. She and her twin sister, Mai, had lived there their entire lives. After high school, she had started medical school. But after a little over a year, she wasn't sure if it was the right path for her. Just a month earlier, in September, she had landed a substitute teaching job at a local school. People who knew Tove described her as active, adventurous, and passionate about football and the outdoors. But there was another side to her. She was on antidepressant medication, which led some to speculate whether she had run away. However, her family and friends shut that down immediately. That's when the police ramped up their search and started putting the pieces together. They went to the bar where Tove was last seen and started questioning people. What they learned was disturbing. Yes, there had been an altercation that night. Tove's friends confirmed that she had been having a great time until she wasn't. And the last people seen with her? Joanna and Maya. Since Tove's bike was found so close to Joanna's apartment, police knew they needed to focus on that area. It was the last known clue to where she had been that night. Then came an eerie and unsettling detail. Joanna's downstairs neighbors, a father and son, had heard something strange the night Tove disappeared. A loud thud, so intense that it made their TV shake. Concerned, they went upstairs to check on Joanna, but she brushed them off. The father later described her as looking nervous. She excused the noise, claiming she was just helping a drunk friend who had gotten sick. A little later, Joanna asked the son for a ride to McDonald's so she could buy a cheeseburger for her so-called sick friend. Something about her behavior didn't sit right with him. He tried making small talk, even asking questions about the night, but Joanna wasn't having it. He described her as absent-minded and disorganized, almost like her brain was somewhere else entirely. It was clear something was off. When police finally brought Joanna in for questioning, she admitted something crucial. She and Tove had been friends once. Back in 2020, they had been close, but things had turned sour. They had fought over drinking, personal drama, and other conflicts. By the spring of that year, they had stopped speaking entirely. And then, Joanna started the character assassination. She painted Tove as reckless and unstable, claiming she struggled with self-harm, alcohol abuse, and what she called attention-seeking behavior. Then she described what went down at the bar that night. According to Joanna, she had been hanging out with Maya and another friend. That's when Tove suddenly walked up out of nowhere and sneered, "Joanna, how does it feel to be the worst person in the world?" Joanna claimed she asked Tove to leave her alone, but Tove attacked her, hitting her in the head. If her friends hadn't stepped in, she insisted, she could have been seriously hurt. She even went to bar security to make sure things didn't go any further. So, that should have been the end of it, right? Wrong. Because after all that, Joanna suddenly decided she wanted to make amends. She calmly invited Tove back to her apartment to talk things out. Now let's think about this. If someone just attacked you, would you really want them alone in your home? And if she truly wanted to squash the beef, why not do it at the bar? But for some reason, Tove didn't see it coming. She went with Joanna, and that was the last mistake she ever made. Joanna's version of events? She said that once they got to her apartment, she and Tove talked things through, hugged it out, and then, just like that, Tove left. And that loud noise that shook the neighbor's TV? Oh, Joanna had an answer for that too. She claimed Maya got sick, like violently sick, threw up, then collapsed right onto the bathroom floor. That's the thud the neighbors heard, not some kind of struggle. But don't worry, Joanna had it all under control. She said she cleaned up the mess, helped Maya get back on her feet, and then politely asked Tove to leave so she could take care of her friend. And that's it. Tove, according to Joanna, walked out of that apartment at 3 a.m. Then, like the good friend she was, Joanna went out to grab food for Maya because, you know, a cheeseburger fixes everything. That's when she asked her neighbor to give her a ride to McDonald's. Case closed, right? Not even close. Because when detectives started looking into her story, nothing added up. Detectives were able to track Tove's movements that night using her phone's GPS, and what they found? It completely blew Joanna's story apart. From 2:47 to 3:08 a.m., Tove's phone was bouncing between Joanna's apartment and McDonald's. Then, at 3:08 a.m., it went back to Joanna's apartment and stayed there until 3:45. The last ping, 3:50 a.m., but this time, it wasn't anywhere near the apartment. And after that, radio silence. So if Tove had really left at 3 a.m. like Joanna claimed, why was her phone still moving in sync with Joanna? And it wasn't the only hole in Joanna's story. She told police she hadn't seen Tove's bike when she got back from McDonald's. But her neighbor, who was with her, completely contradicted that. He told police the bike was still there. And then there was Joanna's creepy, borderline obsessive hatred of Tove. She had despised Tove for years. She even wrote an entire song about her and her twin sister, calling them clingy, desperate for attention, and willing to do anything to stay relevant. She accused them of being relentless bullies, and even went as far as to suggest they were Lucifer's slaves, doing the devil's work. Yikes. But here's where it gets really twisted. Everything Joanna accused Tove of, she was guilty of herself. Everyone the police spoke to rejected Joanna's version of Tove's character. Friends and family described Tove as kind, well-liked. Even Tove's twin sister, Mai, told police they had cut Joanna off because she was spreading vicious rumors. And it gets even worse. One of Joanna's ex-boyfriends came forward with a chilling story. Joanna had once tried to set his apartment on fire. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, listen to this. On January 6th of that year, someone set fire to Tove and Mai's family's front door. When investigators checked Joanna's phone records, guess who was in the area that night? Joanna. Oh, and here's the darkest part of all. Joanna had reportedly told multiple friends she wanted Tove dead. This was way more than just a grudge. This was an obsession. At this point, police knew that Joanna had something to do with Tove's disappearance. Her story had too many contradictions, and the more they dug, the more it became clear. Something awful had happened inside that apartment. They got a search warrant, and the moment investigators stepped inside, they were hit with a strong, overpowering smell of cleaning agents, especially in the bathroom. It was clear someone had gone through a lot of effort to scrub the place down. But despite the heavy cleaning, police still found a roll of black garbage bags, a wine box, and 2 wine glasses. Now this didn't add up. Why go through the trouble of deep cleaning your entire apartment, scrubbing every inch, but then leave out 2 used wine glasses? That tiny detail was enough to make detectives' suspicions skyrocket. Something in their gut told them that Tove was no longer alive. But without proof, they had nothing solid to go on. For weeks, search teams and volunteers scoured fields, forests, and desolate roads, desperate for any sign of her. Nothing. It was like she had vanished into thin air. Then, digital forensics cracked the case wide open. Both Joanna and Maya's phones went completely silent at 3 a.m. That alone was strange. But at 4 a.m., Joanna's phone suddenly came back online. Maya's phone stayed offline until 5:22 a.m. And then came the biggest breakthrough of all. Between 4:25 and 4:50 a.m., Joanna's phone pinged deep in a forest east of Vetlanda. Investigators didn't hesitate. Search teams and K9 units raced to the location. It didn't take long before someone spotted something: a pair of feet sticking out near the road. As they moved closer, their worst fears were confirmed. A partially burned body lay on its back. On November 2nd, exactly 17 days after she was reported missing, the body was confirmed to be Tove Tunis. Nearby, searchers found bedsheets and torn garbage bags, the same kind found in Joanna's apartment. This wasn't a missing person case anymore. This was a cold-blooded murder. And now, detectives knew exactly who was responsible. As investigators dug deeper, the evidence against Joanna just kept piling up. On the morning of October 16th, CCTV footage captured her making some very suspicious purchases: 3 bottles of lighter fluid, 3 packs of wet wipes, and a white sheet. She paid with her Apple Wallet, and the receipt was timestamped at exactly 11:36 a.m. Moments later, cameras caught her driving off, likely heading to the forest to burn Tove's body. With this damning evidence, police arrested both Joanna and Maya, bringing them in for questioning. But despite being confronted with an overwhelming amount of proof, photos, phone records, and even pine needles from the forest found on Joanna's bed and Maya's jacket, both women refused to crack. Joanna, in particular, had an excuse for everything. At one point, she claimed that she and Maya had been in the forest eating hash cake, which was why she was hesitant to tell police about it. But when Maya was questioned separately, she completely denied this ever happened. Joanna even tried throwing her own neighbor under the bus, the one who had driven her to McDonald's that night, desperately shifting blame wherever she could, but none of it was convincing. All roads still led back to Joanna and Maya. Then came the evidence that sealed the deal. Tove's DNA was found in the back seat of Joanna's car and in her bathroom, proving without a doubt that Tove's body had been inside that apartment and later transported to the forest. Finally, after 2.5 months, Joanna sort of confessed, but her story was all over the place. According to her, she was showing Tove her newly renovated bathroom when Tove brushed her off, which led to an argument. Joanna claimed that Tove attacked her first, saying, "She kicked me, so I sat on her. She said, 'What the hell are you doing?' Then she put her hands around my neck, so I put my hands around her neck and pushed." Joanna claimed that the grip lasted for a few seconds, that Tove jerked and coughed before suddenly going silent. She also claimed that Maya held Tove's arms down during the struggle, implying they had both accidentally killed her. But forensic experts told a very different story. The autopsy showed that the grip around Tove's neck lasted far longer than Joanna claimed. The coroner described Tove's death as both prolonged and agonizing. Then there was Maya's version of events, completely different from Joanna's. She claimed she had slept through the entire incident and only discovered Tove's body when she woke up. But the evidence? Yeah, it didn't back her up at all. Investigators discovered that Maya's phone had registered steps in her health app during the time she claimed she was asleep. And then, there was the most chilling detail. The coroner stated that Tove hadn't been able to resist while she was being killed. There was no DNA under her nails, no scratches, nothing to indicate she had fought back. By the time the trial started on March 27th, 2023, the prosecution was confident they had more than enough to convict both women of murder. They didn't hold back on the details, laying out exactly how Tove died. Joanna Leshem Johnson and Maya Hellman, acting together, deliberately took Tove Tunney's life by suffocation. According to the prosecution, Joanna sat on Tove's chest and abdomen while strangling her, while Maya held down her arms to prevent her from resisting. After the murder, Joanna acted like nothing had happened. She got a ride from her neighbor to a McDonald's drive-thru and brought them back to Maya. When detectives later questioned her, she claimed they were just running on mechanical instincts and needed to eat. But after their little fast food break, it was time to cover their tracks. First, Joanna went outside and got rid of Tove's bike, which was still parked outside the apartment. Then came the real cleanup job, disposing of Tove's body. They dragged Tove's body down the stairs the same way before stuffing her into Joanna's car. From there, they drove out to a wooded area outside Vetlanda, doused her body in hand sanitizer, and set it on fire, hoping it would completely burn. But it didn't. Turns out, a single bottle of hand sanitizer wasn't enough. So what did Joanna do? She went to a local dollar store the next day and bought 3 small bottles of chemical gasoline. Then, she went back to the forest, poured more fuel over the body, and tried again. And here's where things get really disturbing. Joanna later claimed she did it out of compassion. It felt much better to burn someone than to let animals eat them. It was already unpleasant as it was. Meanwhile, Maya's defense tried to push a completely different story. They claimed Tove had accidentally choked on her own vomit after a night of heavy drinking and insisted that Maya never helped restrain her. But the coroner's report? Yeah, that didn't help their case. It suggested that Tove's arms had been pinned against a flat surface, possibly the floor, casting serious doubt on Maya's so-called innocence. And then, there was the search history. Joanna's phone was filled with some of the most incriminating searches imaginable. She had looked up things like how to murder someone discreetly, how can you discreetly burn someone inside, can you die from poison, best revenge on an ex-friend. And if that wasn't bad enough, Maya's phone had similar searches. When police confronted Joanna about it, she gave one of the worst excuses imaginable. She claimed she was just looking for song lyrics that rhymed with the word discreet. Yeah, sure. If anything, this only made it more obvious that the murder was premeditated. These two wanted Tove gone. But the big question is, why? While the exact motive was never officially established, there's been plenty of speculation. Many believe it boiled down to jealousy, psychological manipulation, and a toxic power dynamic that eventually spiraled into murder. Joanna's hostility toward Tove had been building for a while, since they were in high school. Some believe she saw Tove as a threat, whether to her social status, her ego, or something deeper. And Maya? She was just a willing accomplice, blindly going along with Joanna's twisted agenda. There were plenty of warning signs, like that hate song Joanna wrote about Tove. It likely stemmed from unresolved envy, resentment, or a need for control. Studies on interpersonal aggression suggest that when someone constantly harasses or humiliates a target, spreading rumors, isolating them socially, it's often because they see them as a threat to their status or self-image. And it seems like Joanna was obsessed with tearing Tove down. On April 19th, 2023, Joanna and Maya were both sentenced to life in prison for murder and gross violation of a body. This was historic, the first time in Sweden's history that a woman under 21 had ever received a life sentence. But the story didn't end there. After appealing the ruling in October 2023, Joanna's sentence was reduced to just 16 years. Maya, on the other hand, was fully acquitted of the murder charges. She was still convicted for gross violation of a body, but was immediately released, having already served a year in detention. A lot of people found this to be beyond unfair. But wait, there's more. According to Aftonbladet, Joanna actually tried to escape from the Hinseberg Women's Prison on New Year's Eve 2023. Her insane plan: team up with another inmate, blind a guard in both eyes using tweezers, and break out before anyone could raise the alarm. Fortunately, prison officials caught on before she could put the plan into action. She was immediately transferred to another facility. As it stands, Joanna is set to be released in less than 15 years, a fact that a lot of people are still struggling to accept. So, what do you think about what Joanna and Maya did? Was this all just jealousy taken to the extreme, or was there something even darker at play? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you thought this case was twisted, oh, trust me, we've got plenty more where that came from. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss one of our deep dives into the most chilling true crime cases out there, because what's coming next will leave you speechless.